Hey there, I'm Margaret. For 35 years, I worked as an ER nurse. I've seen thousands of patients come through those hospital doors with fractures and breaks. I've held their hands, I've administered their pain meds, I've helped them understand their road to recovery. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day I became that patient. The day I heard that horrifying crack as I slipped on my kitchen floor. The day my independence was suddenly stolen from me. The day I fractured my hip at just 67 years old. You know, it's funny how life works. One minute you're making your morning coffee, thinking about your garden or what book you'll read later. The next minute you're lying on the cold tile, unable to move, wondering if anyone will find you. That was my reality on October 12, 2019. A date forever etched in my memory. I'd spent my entire career helping others through their medical emergencies. I prided myself on staying active after retirement. I walked 3 miles every day. I did yoga twice a week. I thought I was doing everything right. But there I was, sprawled on my kitchen floor, my cell phone just out of reach, experiencing the most excruciating pain I'd ever felt. After what felt like hours, my daughter stopped by for our weekly lunch date and found me. The look of fear in her eyes is something I'll never forget. The ambulance ride, the x-rays, the diagnosis, it all felt surreal. Like I was floating above, watching someone else's life unfold. But it wasn't someone else. It was me. And I was facing months of recovery, physical therapy, and a completely altered life. Here's what most people don't understand about bone health, including me despite my medical background. Our bones are constantly changing. They're living tissue. Throughout our lives, our bodies break down old bone and build new bone. When we're young, this process happens quickly. Our bodies make new bone faster than it breaks down old bone, increasing bone mass. But around age 30, things start to shift. Most of us reach our peak bone mass, and then the tide slowly turns. By the time we hit our 40s and 50s, especially for women after menopause, bone breakdown happens faster than bone building. And unless we're actively working to counter this, we're losing bone density year after year. I thought my active lifestyle was enough. But I wasn't doing the right kind of exercise. I wasn't getting enough calcium or vitamin D. And I wasn't addressing the invisible weakening happening inside my body. My fracture wasn't just bad luck or a simple fall. It was the culmination of years of bone loss that had gone undetected. And the scariest part, I had no symptoms, no warning signs, no way to know my bones were becoming more fragile until that moment when my hip couldn't withstand the impact of my fall. Let me tell you something they don't prepare you for, the emotional toll of a fracture like this. The physical pain was intense, yes. But the emotional pains, that cut deeper. Suddenly, I couldn't use the bathroom without help. I couldn't shower alone. I couldn't make my own meals. After decades of caring for others, I was now dependent on my family for the most basic needs. The loss of dignity, the loss of privacy, the loss of control. It was devastating. Depression crept in. Anxiety about falling again became constant. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, convinced I was falling. Even after I healed enough to move around, I was afraid to leave my house. Afraid of ice, afraid of uneven sidewalks, afraid of crowds where someone might bump into me. I'm sharing this because no one talks about this part. The medical reports focus on recovery times and physical therapy protocols. But they don't capture the tears I cried when I couldn't bend over to put on my own socks. They don't mention how isolating it feels when your friends are still living their active lives while you're stuck at home, wondering if you'll ever feel normal again. And that's what drove me to make a change. Not just for my physical recovery, but for my emotional well-being. For my independence. For my life. 3 months into my recovery, I met Dr. Abigail Chen. She wasn't like other doctors I'd seen. She didn't just look at my x-rays and bone density scans. She looked at me, the whole person. She asked about my diet, my exercise habits, my stress levels, my sleep patterns. She wanted to know what mattered to me, what I wanted to get back to doing. Dr. Chen said something that changed everything for me. She said, "Margaret, your fracture isn't the end of your story. It's just a chapter. And you get to write what happens next." That day, we developed a comprehensive plan. Not just to heal my fracture, but to rebuild my bone density, strengthen my muscles, improve my balance, and restore my confidence. She called it my bone-strengthening routine, but it was really a life-strengthening routine. I'll never forget what she told me when I expressed doubt about making progress at my age. She said, "The human body has an amazing capacity to heal and strengthen at any age. The question isn't whether you can improve, it's how much you want to improve." That conversation lit a fire in me. I decided that my fracture would not define me. It would not be the beginning of a downward spiral. Instead, it would be my wake-up call, my opportunity to become stronger than I'd ever been before. Before I share my routine, I think it's important to understand a bit more about bone density and how it works. This knowledge was crucial for me. It helped me understand why certain exercises and nutrients were essential. Bone density is measured using something called a DEXA scan, which stands for dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. It's a fancy term for a simple, painless test that measures how many grams of calcium and other bone minerals are packed into a segment of bone. The results are given as a T-score, which compares your bone density to that of a healthy 30-year-old adult. A score of -1 or above is considered normal. A score between -1 and -2.5 indicates osteopenia, which is lower than normal bone density but not low enough to be classified as osteoporosis. A score of -2.5 or below indicates osteoporosis. When I had my first DEXA scan after my fracture, my T-score was -2.7. I had osteoporosis and I hadn't even known it. Like many women, I'd skipped my regular checkups, thinking I was healthy enough. I'd never had a DEXA scan before, despite being well past the recommended age to start. What shocked me most was learning that osteoporosis is often called the silent disease because bone loss occurs without symptoms. You might not know you have it until a fracture happens. And by then, significant damage has already been done. But here's the hopeful part: bone density can improve. It's not a one-way street. With the right approach, you can add density back to your bones. You can strengthen what's been weakened. You can reduce your fracture risk significantly. And that's exactly what I set out to do. My bone strengthening routine has 3 main components: nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle modifications. Let's start with nutrition, because what you put into your body directly affects your bone health. Calcium is obviously crucial for bone health. But here's what I didn't realize: it's not just about drinking milk. In fact, after working with a nutritionist, I discovered that I'd been getting far less calcium than I needed, despite thinking I had a healthy diet. For women my age, the recommended daily intake of calcium is 1,200 milligrams. To reach that, I now make sure to include calcium-rich foods throughout my day. That means plain yogurt with breakfast, a kale and almond salad for lunch, sardines a couple times a week, and plenty of leafy greens with dinner. But calcium alone isn't enough. Your body needs vitamin D to absorb calcium properly. The recommended daily amount of vitamin D is 800 to 1,000 IU for adults over 50. I get this through a combination of moderate sun exposure, fatty fish like salmon, and a supplement recommended by my doctor. Protein is another crucial nutrient for bone health that many people overlook. About 50% of bone is made of protein. I aim for at least 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight daily, from sources like fish, lean meats, beans, and lentils. Magnesium, potassium, vitamin K, and vitamin C all play supporting roles in bone health too. So I make sure to eat a colorful diet with plenty of fruits and vegetables. Just as important as what I eat is what I don't eat. I've drastically reduced my sodium intake, as high salt consumption can cause your body to lose calcium. I've cut back on caffeine, which can interfere with calcium absorption. And I've limited alcohol to occasional glasses of red wine, as excessive alcohol can interfere with vitamin D's ability to help your body absorb calcium. The nutrition changes weren't easy at first. I had to relearn how to shop, how to cook, how to plan my meals. But after a few months, it became second nature. And I noticed differences beyond my bone health. My energy improved, my sleep got better, and those stubborn 10 pounds I'd been carrying finally melted away. Now let's talk about the exercise component of my routine, which has been absolutely transformative. Before my fracture, I thought walking and gentle yoga were enough. They're good activities, don't get me wrong, but they weren't providing the specific types of stress my bones needed to strengthen. The key thing I learned is that bone responds to stress by building more bone. It's a beautiful adaptation mechanism. When you put controlled stress on your bones through certain types of exercise, your body responds by laying down new bone tissue. But not all exercise creates the kind of stress that stimulates bone growth. Weight-bearing exercises are essential. These are activities where your bones and muscles work against gravity while your feet and legs carry your weight. For me, this includes walking, but I've added hiking on uneven terrain, stair climbing, and dancing. I do some form of weight-bearing exercise for at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Even more important for building bone are resistance exercises. These involve working against some type of resistance, like weights, resistance bands, or even your own body weight. I started very gradually with light hand weights and resistance bands, under the supervision of my physical therapist. Now 2 years later, I do resistance training 3 times a week. I use dumbbells, a weighted vest for certain exercises, and resistance bands. My routine includes squats, lunges, hip extensions, rows, and overhead presses. I've gradually increased the weight as I've gotten stronger, which continues to challenge my bones. Balance exercises are the third critical component. Falls are what lead to most fractures, so preventing falls is just as important as strengthening bones. Every day I practice Tai-Chi movements, one-legged stands, and walking heel-to-toe. I even brush my teeth while standing on one foot, multitasking at its finest. Flexibility exercises round out my routine. While they don't directly build bone, they improve range of motion and help prevent injuries during other activities. I do gentle stretching daily and have returned to my yoga practice, though I modify certain poses based on my doctor's recommendations. The most surprising aspect of this exercise routine has been how it's changed my relationship with my body. Before my fracture, I exercised because I felt I should. Now I exercise because I feel the difference it makes. I'm more in tune with my body. I notice improvements in my strength, my balance, my energy. Exercise has become less about checking a box and more about honoring what my body needs to thrive. And the results speak for themselves. My most recent DEXA scan showed my T-score has improved to -1.9. I'm no longer in the osteoporosis range, I've moved up to osteopenia. My doctor says this kind of improvement is uncommon, especially at my age. She attributes it to my consistent adherence to my complete bone strengthening routine. The third component of my bone strengthening routine involves lifestyle modifications that reduce fracture risk and support overall bone health. Fall prevention became a major focus. I did a thorough safety assessment of my home, removing throw rugs, improving lighting, installing grab bars in the bathroom, and arranging furniture to create clear pathways. I wear proper footwear with non-slip soles, even inside my house. No more shuffling around in socks or flimsy slippers. I've also adjusted how I move through the world. I'm more mindful of my surroundings, scanning for potential hazards like wet floors or uneven pavement. I use handrails on stairs. I avoid rushing even when I'm running late. And in winter, I wear ice grippers on my boots and use trekking poles for additional stability. Sleep has become a priority, as poor sleep is associated with increased fall risk and may affect bone metabolism. I aim for 7-8 hours of quality sleep each night, following a consistent sleep schedule and creating a restful bedroom environment. Stress management is another key aspect. Chronic stress increases cortisol levels, which can lead to bone loss over time. I practice daily meditation, deep breathing exercises, and spend time in nature to keep stress levels in check. I've also become more proactive about my medical care. I keep regular appointments with my doctor to monitor my bone density and adjust my approach as needed. I review my medications regularly, as some can contribute to bone loss or increase fall risk. And I've become my own advocate, asking questions and seeking second opinions when necessary. Perhaps the most important lifestyle change has been my mindset. I no longer see aging as a decline. I don't accept that weakness, frailty, and fractures are inevitable parts of growing older. Instead, I see each day as an opportunity to strengthen my body, to build resilience, to create health rather than merely prevent disease. This shift in perspective has been liberating. I'm not fighting against aging. I'm embracing it with knowledge, with intention, with a commitment to thriving rather than just surviving. Now, I don't want to paint an unrealistically rosy picture. This journey hasn't been smooth or easy. There have been plenty of challenges and setbacks along the way. The first 6 months were particularly difficult. Physical therapy was painful. There were days when I felt I wasn't making progress. Times when I would try to do something simple, like reach a glass from a high shelf and realize I couldn't. Moments of frustration that brought me to tears. I hit plateaus where my strength seemed to stall. I experienced setbacks when I pushed too hard and had to scale back. There was a period of several weeks when hip pain returned and I feared I'd done permanent damage. The emotional challenges were just as significant. I battled periods of depression, especially during the long winter months when getting outside was difficult. I struggled with comparing my current self to my pre-fracture self, focusing on what I'd lost rather than what I was regaining. Social situations sometimes triggered anxiety. Would there be a place for me to sit? Would I have to navigate stairs? Would people be patient if I moved more slowly? I declined invitations, withdrew from activities I once enjoyed, created a smaller world for myself out of fear. And there were practical challenges too. My Medicare coverage for physical therapy ran out before I felt ready to continue on my own. Some of the supplements I needed were expensive. Finding the right professionals to support my recovery, a physical therapist who specialized in osteoporosis, a nutritionist who understood bone health, took time and persistence. But for each challenge, I found a solution. When professional physical therapy ended, I joined a specialized exercise class for people with osteoporosis. When supplements strained my budget, I researched food sources that could provide those nutrients naturally. When depression crept in, I connected with a support group of others who had experienced fractures. I learned to celebrate small victories. The first time I could put on my socks without assistance, the day I walked a full mile without pain, the morning I realized I'd slept through the night without waking up uncomfortable. And gradually, through consistent effort and with support from healthcare providers, family, and friends, I moved forward. Not in a straight line, but in a series of advances and retreats that ultimately led to progress. Today, 3 years after my fracture, my life looks very different than it did during those dark days of early recovery. And surprisingly, in many ways, it's better than my life before the fracture. I'm more active now than I was pre-fracture. My exercise routine is more varied, more intentional, more effective. I'm stronger at 70 than I was at 67. My balance is better. My posture has improved dramatically. My diet is more nutritious and more satisfying. I've discovered new foods, new recipes, new ways of nourishing my body that I might never have explored otherwise. I actually enjoy cooking again, seeing it as an act of self-care rather than a chore. My home is safer and more functional. Although modifications I made for fall prevention have improved the flow and organization of my living space. Everything has its place. Clutter is minimal. The environment supports rather than hinders my movement. My medical care is more proactive. I'm no longer the person who skips checkups or dismisses symptoms. I've assembled a healthcare team that listens to me, values my input, and works collaboratively to support my health goals. My relationships have deepened. Going through this experience revealed who my true friends were, the ones who showed up, who helped without being asked, who saw my vulnerability as courage rather than weakness. And my relationship with my daughter has transformed. We've moved beyond parent-child roles to become true partners and friends. Most importantly, my relationship with myself has changed. I've developed a profound appreciation for my body's resilience, for its capacity to heal and strengthen. I've let go of old self-criticisms about appearance and embraced functionality as my priority. I've discovered reserves of determination I didn't know I possessed. The fracture that I once viewed as the worst thing that could happen to me has, ironically, led to some of the best changes in my life. It forced me to confront my mortality, to reassess my priorities, to take control of my health in ways I had neglected. Don't misunderstand me, I wouldn't wish a hip fracture on anyone. The pain, the loss of independence, the long recovery, it's a difficult road. Prevention is infinitely preferable. And that's why I'm sharing my story and my bone-strengthening routine. Because what I've learned shouldn't require the trauma of a fracture. So here we are. From that terrifying day on my kitchen floor to today, recording this video to share what I've learned with all of you. If my experience can help even one person avoid what I went through, or give hope to someone currently in recovery, then sharing my story is worth it. The routine I've described, the nutrition, the exercise, the lifestyle modifications, it's not just about preventing fractures. It's about creating a foundation for an active, independent, joyful life as we age. It's about being able to play with grandchildren, to travel, to garden, to dance, to live fully without the limitation of fragile bones. If you're watching this and you haven't had a fracture, consider this your wake-up call. Don't wait for a devastating injury to take your bone health seriously. Start now. Talk to your doctor about a bone density test, especially if you're a woman over 65 or have risk factors for osteoporosis. If you're already dealing with low bone density or recovering from a fracture, know that improvement is possible. At any age, no matter your current condition, small, consistent actions accumulate into significant results over time. And if you're a healthcare provider, please share this information with your patients. Bone health often gets overlooked until a fracture occurs. You have the power to change that narrative, to emphasize prevention, to help your patients understand that bone loss isn't inevitable, it's modifiable. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or your own bone health stories in the comments below. And if you found this information helpful, please share it with others who might benefit. Remember, your bones support you every day. Isn't it time you return the favor? Thank you for listening to my story. Here's to strong bones and the full, active lives they allow us to lead.